Hey guys, welcome back to another video on the channel. If you enjoy this video, please subscribe to the channel, leave a thumbs up and a commentary if you want to mention any of your favorite openings, and I'll try and find interesting games to show with that opening in mind. So let's get back to the Tata Steel tournament. There were two miniature games. We saw one the day before yesterday between Lu Miao and Svein. A very nice game. Today we're featuring on the channel two very strong grandmasters, which I don't think have appeared before on the channel. With the white pieces, Harikrishna from India, for many years one of the best players in the game, many times Olympic player, and recently one of Gukesh's seconds for the World Championship. Now he's currently rated number 6 in India, 6 or 7. So just dropped out for the first 4, but still a very, very strong player. And with the black pieces, we have a Dutch player, Max Warmerdam, a young player, 2646 rated. He did quite a good Tata Steel, and he's definitely a player who will be participating in the main events in the coming years, and already one of Netherlands' main players on the Olympic team. So let's get into the game. Harikrishna is playing with the white pieces, and Pentala for many years has been considered one of the toughest players, especially with the white pieces. Very solid, very strong, very well prepared in the openings, and really a difficult player to beat. So as many players are starting out nowadays, he goes for the knight f3, g3 system, very flexible, without giving away for the moment if he's going to play with d4 or with d3. So he can play King's Indian reversed with d3, or go for d4 with a more open game. It's a very flexible system. Now, before black plays e5, which is the threat exactly now, and which would force white to play with the d3 pawn, he decides to play d4. And this actually leads to a very interesting line, which is also called the reversed Grunfeld. So if black takes on d4 and goes for the full center, white swaps on c6 and plays c4. And if you look at this position, you'll notice that this is a Grunfeld defense, but with reverse colors. And that means that white does have an extra tempo in some of the lines. Now, as you all know, I've talked about this before. When you play a defense with white, you reverse the colors. You do have an extra tempo. Sounds good. And in some tactical positions, it could be very important to have the extra tempo. But again, sometimes having the extra tempo means you have to play a certain move, which if it was the other way around, you wouldn't be playing it because it's the other player's turn. And that sometimes forces your hand. So it's not always a good idea to have an extra move. Generally it is, but it's not something that is forced. If you have the extra move, you're already much better. Not necessarily. I think the Grunfeld, it could be useful to have the extra move. Then again, remember, you are playing a defense. You're not playing an opening. So in some ways, you're conceding to your opponent the initiative because you're playing as if you were playing with black. Okay, after that small theoretical discussion, general discussion, not specific to the game, let's get back to the game. Max played e6, very solid. But now Harikrishna plays c4. And now we get more of a Catalan mainline position. Pawn takes pawn, pawn takes pawn, queen takes queen, rook takes queen. This could also come from some Queen's Gambit accepted lines, but I think it's more from a Catalan. Bishop takes, and as you can see, momentarily, black does have an extra pawn, but it's very difficult to protect the c4 pawn, as after knight b to d2, already if you leave the pawn there, it's going to be captured, and if you protect it, which is what happens in the game, white is going to have very good compensation. Some players decide to give the pawn back with c3, which is interesting. You just give the pawn back, and now castle. Black does have a weak pawn on c3, but I've seen this being played out several times, and although the pawn is weak, we get a couple of tempi attacking the bishop and bringing the bishop out. We do have the open file. The d7 bishop can't appear yet. So this is actually quite interesting for white. Warmerdam played b5. a4, breaking up the chain. As all of you know, a6 is always a mistake because we take and the rook is hanging on a8 if black recaptures. So Warmerdam tries to protect his extra pawn with bishop to a6, which is always very risky. And now Harikrishna, certainly still in theory, goes knight to g5. Now he's hitting the knight with the bishop. So that must be protected. And the way to do that is blocking with the knight on d5. Now the other knight comes into the game, hitting the bishop. Bishop to b4. Everything is hanging on a string because white is very active here. But black does have the extra pawn. And if he's able to castle and knock the knight back, he will consolidate his extra pawn and then could start to think to try and win the game. So it's one of those situations where Harikrishna has to strike, and very fast. And indeed he does. He plays knight to x7, a piece sacrifice. King takes and knight to g5. Now the idea behind the sacrifice is to bring the black king towards the center of the board. He's going to sacrifice again on e6 with the idea that if the king captures, now we're two pieces down, but we get back immediately one of them here and the other one is right behind. And if black goes to protect the king, he comes in big trouble because of the skewer. So pawn takes pawn, bishop takes pawn, and bishop takes c4, hitting the king with check and winning the bishop on b5. So after knight takes e6, black decided to play knight c to e7. Now black still has an extra piece. He still has an extra piece and the knight is under attack. So white's hand is forced. He must play aggressively. Pawn takes pawn. Now if bishop takes b5, Max could have played bishop takes knight, rook takes knight, and as he's hitting the bishop, he is still very much in the game with an extra pawn, and this would work very well for him. So Max dropped back, but now there's no more attack. We do have two pawns for the piece, but it doesn't seem to be enough. Not enough. The thing is, the black king is still not totally safe, and I'm sure that Pentala had analyzed this position and thought he would have good chances to win the game. There are many pins, the black king isn't safe, and there are some ideas as the pawn on a7 could be captured at some point, the bishop could come to g5 at some point. There are still some tactical ideas. Anyway, now the knight is being attacked, so knight to d4, king to f7, and rook to a4, sort of threatening ideas like rook takes b4 and bishop to b7 or bishop takes d5. Here the computer suggests bishop to d6, just giving back the pawn, but that's a very difficult move to do, although it probably would have been a good idea. Instead, Max played c3, thinking that the pawn can't be captured. It's actually quite correct because if knight takes and we have a fork here. But after playing c3, Warmerdam plays a very, very good move. Rook to d3. Not such an easy move to spot from far away. Now the rook is also coming towards the attack, and the black king could easily be in trouble. It's very interesting, this position, because generally when we sacrifice material to attack the king, we really need our queen on the board. But in this game, the queens are exchanged very early. So to see the black king being harassed by all white's pieces without the queen is actually quite instructive. And hopefully this game will give you all a bit more sense of initiative, even though the queens are not on the board. a5, pawn takes pawn, bishop takes pawn, another mistake, but rook a to c8 was a very difficult line to calculate, according to the computer. And now white goes into the attack. Rook to f3, king to g6, and knight to c6. Now the threat is rook to g4, alongside other threats like knight takes e7, followed by rook to c3. Even the bishop on c1, you can notice that it's controlling two of black's escape routes. So actually black's king is in big trouble. For example, I calculated that if bishop takes c6, we check again, and now we just capture the knight with discovered check, and the position is completely lost. Black tries to find a way. He goes bishop to f6, blocking some squares and trying to hide behind the pawn. And now Harikrishna goes for the kill. Knight to e4 check, t5 check, bishop takes, and rook to g4. And now Warmerdam decided to resign, but I'm going to show you the final moves of the game. The only move here is king to h5, and what would have happened here? Well, there are several quite nice ways to finish off the game, but the main line would be rook to g5, discovered check with the bishop, bishop again, we capture another piece on e7, and here there are several ways to win, but the cleanest way is to check. If the king goes down, we mop up these two pieces, and if the king goes up, then we have rook f6, and the threat is to mop up the bishop on b7, and there's a very nice mate to finish off the game with. And black wouldn't be able to prevent the mate with h3 or f3. Of course, Warmerdam could have carried on from the resignation position, but Harikrishna would not fail to find one of these different sequences, and probably Warmerdam just had enough of his own game, and that's why the game finished slightly earlier. So this game, I think, shows us that we can really bring in a strong attack even without the queens on the board, if we're able to bring enough pieces to the vicinity of the black king. So if you enjoyed the video, again, please subscribe and leave a comment below. If you have a favorite opening you would like to see on the video, or maybe a favorite player, leave a commentary, and I'm preparing some notes and always looking to find games to bring that might be enjoyable for you guys, especially if it's a position or an opening that you'd like to see. And while that happens, remember, keep playing, keep improving, and have fun. I'm actually playing the Spanish team league these days every Sunday, and then after Easter week I'll be traveling to Minorca to play in the Chess Open Minorca, and yeah, I'll definitely bring some interesting positions from there. Have fun, guys.